Welcome everyone to our latest learning session here at TQA. Today we're focusing on the subject of test automation. As AI accelerates software delivery, manual testing has become the bottleneck stalling enterprise scale, and the risk to core systems has never been higher. In this session, TQA will show you how governed AI-powered test automation clears your backlog, protects architectural integrity, and delivers measurable EBITDA impact. I'm joined here today by our very own Ramzan Neeson, our test automation lead here at TQA. And what Ramzan doesn't know about test automation isn't worth knowing. So we're super privileged to have him here. Ramzan, welcome.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. So let's get cracking. Ramzan, tell me, what is test automation in summary for those listening who may know very little about the subject?
Sure, thanks, Ben. Basically, test automation is the use of software tools to automatically execute tests on any application or system. You create scripts based on requirements, you execute them automatically without human intervention, then you compare the results, right, to previous runs and plan for future runs. This reduces the need for manual testing, which, it could take longer cycles, it could be error prone and not meet the test coverage needs. And, teams can improve their coding and general release cycle, right, in terms of speed, consistency, and repeatability, right? So that's test automation in a nutshell.
And I'm guessing this isn't just for businesses that are writing and cutting code, right? It could just be to help make sure that upgrades and updates to existing systems work functionally correctly afterwards.
Correct. It can be, there's non-functional testing as well for performance, right? And for security, but mostly it's functional testing. Like stated, you have a sprint cycle, you build features, you want to make sure they work automatically, right? So that's the test automation helps with that. Just do it faster and cleaner, down to the code level on occasion. So that's, in a nutshell.
Okay. And my understanding is quite a lot of organizations really struggle to scale test automation across their business, or at least beyond the pilot phase. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's the reliance on manual testing. So that can stall automation growth. A lot of firms have a deep manual testing history that, they may not have the expertise or the budget or frankly the culture to align with test automation or scaling test automation. And because of that, when delivery escalates or accelerates, the backlog can grow. And then, you do things faster, you do things, you build more features out, you want to build more features out, but you're not automating the testing, so you're stuck on the manual side, right? So there's a bottleneck there sometimes. And that's where automation can really help. So, along with, having a structured approach, automation can be fragmented. And at the end of the day, you're just building and deploying slower, right? So you can't scale because of that.
And in this case, when you're talking about the backlog, you're talking about a backlog of tests that need to be completed, right? Not the backlog of features that you're developing.
It can be both, right?
Okay.
It can be both because, as you're building out a feature and it's sitting there, if it's not tested quickly, right? Or better, and you can't deploy it. You're not going to deploy something that there's no test evidence against it, right? In your change process. So it could be both. It could be, or you have a lot of tests that, to your point, the opposite is true. And they just sit there in the backlog and you're waiting for testing to finish before you can actually release a product or feature. So both can be true.
And I'm guessing, Ramzan, at the moment, this problem's only going to get worse, right? Because now that we're in this era of AI-enabled coding, theoretically, we can build features faster and faster.
Exactly.
So that problem's only going to get worse, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Understand. Okay. So for those organizations that are in this situation, what's your recommendation here? What should be the first step, perhaps, that these organizations should be looking to do to scale their efforts?
The first thing, I like to do, or we usually do, is start with an assessment. Get a nice picture of where you're at in your testing maturity, right? Look at your current practices, current roadmaps, current workflows, how you do testing today. And then we help you get on that journey, right? So get a real snapshot where you are today. You can identify high impact areas, you can identify candidates for automation, and then, plan and execute to build that business value quickly, right? So the very first step is taking a step back and really looking at the big picture of your testing cycle. Is manual testing a hindrance to your product development and release cycle? Then what can we do to move forward with test automation if that's the case, right? So that's generally the first thing, is take a step back and look at, the strategy and how you do things today in terms of testing.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. But what are the biggest risks, do you think, that organizations are facing when it comes to scaling automation?
So when you do take a look at yourself in the testing world, a lot of it relies on governance or structure, right? A lot of times I see clients where they don't have a governance or structure. Automations can be federated, different teams do different things, different teams test and release at different times, so it's not all one cohesive unit. It's not centralized, right, for lack of a better word. So having the proper governance helps. And I would say it's definitely dependency in this case, especially with the complex systems, right? End-to-end systems, right? Complicated tech stacks. So establishing a governance, it doesn't have to be that even formal. It can just be a group of, product owners, or a group of, for firms that don't have a centralized quality team, right? If it's just a technical development shop, it could be product owners, it could be scrum masters, it could be anyone in that leadership type role that can form a committee to say, hey, this is how we're going to do testing, right? At the end of the day, so automated testing from that point of view. So yeah, governance structure is probably one of the biggest risks. If you don't have that, everything else falls apart. Because you can do technical, right? And if you have a structure or governance already, great. Then it just becomes a technical question of, do we have the capacity? Do we have the capability? Do we have the tools, right? So that's the fairly easier approach and solution versus establishing the organization and the structure behind it.
Yeah.
This is especially the case for, anything in the financial and regulatory world. If you get audited, you better have some sort of structure to follow, right? Because that just makes your whole life easier from that perspective, especially from a testing case, right? You need to show traceability, right? Requirements to defect. And if you don't have a structure there, then that's going to be really hard, and you can really get in trouble quickly.
Got it. So a lack of governance, a lack of process, and potentially a lack of documentation around that as well, that's going to satisfy an auditor, essentially.
Yep.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And we spoke a little bit before about the backlog. How does that financially impact the business as that gets worse?
It just slows it down, Ben, right? Backlogs slow everything down, right? So if you are trying to plan this major release or trying to align with a release for other software vendors or third parties, the bigger the backlog, the slower the delivery, and there's a cost factor there, right? Your cost to serve metric slows down, right? And you can get exposed to production defects or even leak production defects on purpose, right? A lot of release notes have, here's our leak defects, we know they're there, so don't do this, we'll fix it in the next release, right? So and look, it's slower, it's going to directly impact margins, right? From that perspective, you're not releasing on time, you're not releasing on schedule. This is especially the case if there's financial, personal financial goals from a management perspective you're trying to reach, or a company perspective or shareholder perspective, right? So backlogs, if they're managed well, okay, but usually that's not the case. You're trying to resolve and hit your backlog as best you can, right? So that's a direct financial impact, frankly.
I get it. And I guess if you're a software dev company that's selling the solutions that you're building, you're not shipping, right? So you're not making money. Exactly. But equally, if you're the consumer of a product and you're testing updates to new features and services internally to your organization, then you're not getting the value of those features because you're unable to release them into production. So you're just sitting on untapped value that's just waiting to be released. Equally as well, if you don't test and you release and you create bugs, you're creating a degree of failure demand as well there, right? So that's additional an effort that you've got to.
Yeah, you can get into the culture of it too, right? Where, if marketing is promising a specific feature, right, and the development team or product team's having a hard time, building it or frankly testing it. You know what I mean? Like that's part of it too. You just build stress on the culture itself. So there's a financial impact, obviously. There's also, it could be a cultural, morale impact, right? From that perspective. So it hits on a lot of things.
No, 100%. Any gamers out there, there's a lot of the software development firms get a lot of heat, don't they? They release games too early and they haven't been properly tested. That can generate a lot of bad feeling towards that company. So it's
exactly
becoming increasingly crucial, isn't it? Okay, so we mentioned at the beginning of this exercise that we were going to talk a little bit about EBITDA. So how do we connect the dots here? How do you connect test automation efforts directly to EBITDA impact, you think?
Sure. Test automation, like I said earlier, time equals money, the old saying, right? So in terms of, structured ROI modeling, the more you reduce manual testing, right? Meaning, you're using less time to do the same task, right? The more savings, the obvious savings there, right? Less manpower, human power, hourly rate, whatever you want to call it, that can be directly quantified, right? Fewer production defects, obvious savings there, right? Whenever the leaked or found production defect, the cost to fix it is exponential, right? In terms of during the regular development cycle, not only again from a financial cost, but from a branding perspective, like you just said with gaming as an example, right? If something leaks and it's a major bug and you didn't test it properly, that can take a hit in a lot of ways there. And then, faster time to market, faster testing equals more velocity, which means more shipping, like you just said. So it's just the base of it is a time savings, right? The more you automate your testing, the faster you release. That's just, point blank period, right? And all of those tie into either financial and or cultural, performance, right? Branding, I should say, branding performance, right? So very straightforward, nothing too complicated there in terms of the benefits of test automation for financial gain, right? Or financial savings.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So fundamentally, you're getting costs out of the business, and you're also avoiding the cost that could be incurred downstream by the impact of not testing as well. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the subject that's on everybody's mind at the moment, artificial intelligence. You knew I was going there, Ramsey. Get there eventually. So tell me, how does AI fit into this conversation? Can we use AI in the context of test automation without A, can we use it at all, and B, without creating risk? Because I think a lot of people are worried about AI right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. The same way I frame it as the same way test automation helps manual testing, right? In that generic test automation, AI helps test automation, right? If you're moving left. In that, over the past couple of years, especially, right, as everything is scaling with AI, we've seen both from a strategic perspective, a planning perspective, and even the tooling, our vendors we work with perspective. There's a lot of things AI can help. Just to name some, you can review requirements and optimize them, right? Am I testing the right things? Do I have the right coverage in my current state? This goes along with the governance structure, response earlier. So there's the analytical part before you even start testing. AI can help, right? Okay, once you have that, I have my optimized requirements. Okay, now I have to build test cases, right? So do I have the proper test cases? Do I have the right test coverage? Do I have the right test data tied to it? Test data is a whole other thing that AI can help with. And then the most obvious thing too nowadays, especially for technical, is development, coding. It can help write test code. And a lot of these tools and that use test automation are, they're code based or development tools, right? It can generate code for you, like any other developer would too, right? So there's that. It can take your current set and write your code. So you would need little to zero coding experience from that perspective.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things I've seen, and this is probably the biggest impact I've seen so far, is the self-healing aspect of it.
Okay.
So self-healing is, I build a test automation suite for release 1 and it works fine, right? But for release 2, we change certain features or change elements of this code. And what generally happens in a non-test automation AI is that you have a developer or engineer has to go back in there and literally manually change all the code wherever that thing changed, right? Because it'll break the script otherwise. Typical like development 101 in terms of debugging and troubleshooting. Well, AI can do that for you, right? It basically scans, does a difference. Here's the previous version V1, here's V2, and then it'll change it. It's called self-healing.
Okay.
That's kind of cool, right? Because it takes away the human element of it. We've seen that's greatly improved even over the last year. A lot of our vendor partners and others have greatly improved in that space. And that's just to me, that's more next level, right? In terms of really savings time, right? Human time to do, troubleshooting. And there's, test execution analysis, report review. There's, AI can look at your reporting and do prediction models and all that stuff and test models and everything else. So there's so many things they can do, but those are just some of the things that at least I'm seeing and we're seeing today that AI is helping with. And again, it feels like every day, Ben, like it's changing, it's updating, with the scale of AI. So in terms of test automation, AI is definitely a focal point. There's a spotlight on it. And, we would like to help clients use it as best they can. There's definite benefits there too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's somebody who has recently gotten into the vibe coding game and some of the tools out there like Claude, and you're almost natively using test automation right there in the CLI, right? It's just available to use. So I think everybody's going to be using test automation soon in some way, shape, or form. But I think for enterprises, it's, as you mentioned before, it isn't just about vibe coding. It's about having the right governance in place, the right strategy, making sure that you've got all the right tools. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how AI can help remove or reduce some of the heavy lift when it comes to setting up and running and maintaining your test automation estate. But are there any risks? Are there any potential gotchas here?
For AI specific?
Yeah, for AI, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the usual hallucinations, right? So, you have to, the human should be in the loop still. And that's we tell our clients this all the time is, test automation in its current state, you're never going to really replace manual testing. I want to make that clear. It's meant to augment or improve your velocity in testing, not really replace your manual testing. And that's especially the case with AI, right? We're not in a state of AI where you can just set it and forget it. My frank opinion, humans should always be there to check it, for lack of better words, because there could be scope creep, there could be hallucinations, there could be, doing things they shouldn't be doing, right? You can read the same thing every day where some AI has done something wrong or it's not intended to. And cost, right? You mentioned, a lot of clients are doing the Claude Code integration, and everyone's setting up their own in-house, AIs, and the API key cost and the token cost, and that can just inflate like crazy. So the same way we mentioned governance around test automation, you can subset that to a governance around AI, right? So just having that byproduct of that same governance process of including AI, if you're going to use it, there should be a structure to it, and make sure that humans are in the loop and really monitor it, at least for now, right? I mean, I'm saying this in 2026. If I watch this video in a couple of years, they're going to be like, wow, that was ancient. You know what I mean? Like, you're not just setting it and just, do everything. But for now, where we are today, I think the biggest risk is that, humans, the trust element of it, that would be the biggest risk. There's still some capability for us to really check it. And a lot of times, maybe not, right? That, again, day by day, that's getting lesser and lesser, right? But for now, you still need to kind of, for lack of better words, babysit it in a way.
Yeah.
not babysitting like a little child, maybe babysitting a toddler or an older kid, right? You're not feeding it, you're just watching it, making sure it doesn't, fall down or something. So, but that's my perspective, right, on that. So
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I think most people, what you said will resonate with most people and their experiences so far.
Yep.
But I do wonder if perhaps as the cost of using AI comes down, the token cost comes down, maybe the use of adversarial techniques in test automation might reduce some of that risk of LLM, hallucination or model drift. But again, the models are getting better and better all the time, aren't they? So
Yep.
I think we're going to see step progressions in their capability probably far more quickly than we all think, which just seems to be par for the course these days.
Yep.
Okay, well, look, that's been absolutely great. Thank you, Ramsden, for taking us through all of those things. So I think we've covered the majority of things I wanted to talk about today, but just for the sake of the audience here, just for them to take away from this session, if there were 3 things that you would say, guys, remember these 3 things, what would they be? What are your 3 key takeaways here, Ramsden?
Sure. Very simple, right? If you want to engage in test automation or scale test automation, you need structure. That's period, right? You need some sort of structure, and it doesn't matter the size of the firm, right? It doesn't have to be that complicated, but you need some sort of governance around test automation. Number 2, test automation directly impacts financial, the bottom line. So that's the main benefit. And the main benefit, the cost factor, is time. You're saving time by executing more, less manual effort, more comfortable, confidence in your releases, that sort of thing. So it directly impacts financial and a branding perspective, right, in terms of utilizing test automation. And then last thing, we just talked about AI, right? Using AI today, everyone's using it, we get it, but it does provide value, but again, with the governance side of the house. So governance, direct impact to financial and goals, and AI, but be careful. Those are the three takeaways.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ramsden.
Thank you,
everybody here, for watching. Hopefully you've all found this informative and illuminating. If you'd like to know more, please follow the link at the bottom of this video, and it'll let you explore this subject a little bit further. Ramsden, again, thank you so much. You've been a great guest here today. Really enjoyed our conversation.